Rob Tebbutt for Boxing News here with Ben Davison at the Ben Davison Performance Centre in Harlow. How are you, Ben?
I'm good, thanks, mate. You?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Always a pleasure to come down here to the gym. What you been up to? I know you've been away recently.
Yeah, we went away to Fuerteventura to start Leigh Wood's camp, also for potential Joe Saunders comeback. And not much else really, come back, just working away, big fight on the horizon.
Let's talk about Joe Saunders now, rather than kind of waiting until later on in the interview. How is he? It seems like we've been kind of teased with a comeback from Joe for the last couple of years or so. How's he getting on? Yeah,
it's always been on his mind. I think time away from the sport has made him realise actually he misses it, he loves it. And I think he feels like if it's not before the end of this year, then it's probably not going to happen. So he's put his foot down on the pedal. Working to get some of the weight off that he put on in his semi-retirement, as we know too well. Yeah, he's working away and step by step.
For somebody like Joe, I mean, I think it's fair to say that, I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think his return would be financially motivated. What do you think the motivations are for him to return? What brings him back into this crazy old sport?
Yeah, exactly that. He's earned plenty of money within the sport. He's earned plenty of money out of the sport as well. So he's financially secure, and I think that it took this scenario for him to realise that the reason that he does boxing is because of the love of it. And I know that when you get to a certain point, a lot of people get almost disheartened sometimes, I think, with the way that business is or can be within the sport. I know that it turns people a little bit bitter towards the sport sometimes. And I think people along the way get lost and confused and forget about what it is that they're actually doing it for. I think that this, again, semi-retirement, time away from the sport has helped him realise that it's not for the reasons that he might have thought, and that he actually misses the sport. And yeah, it's looking like he's committed to a comeback.
You mentioned there about kind of shifting some of that weight, and you correctly pointed out something that we have to deal with as well, Ben, not just the fighters. Where do you think he would come back weight-wise? Obviously, we've seen him the two-weight world champion at 60 and 68. Would it be 75, or is it a bit too early to say?
I think the goal will be to 68, for sure, but I think the first fight, I don't know, let's see. He's still got plenty of time. His weight has come down quite a bit. He's just going to have to really stay consistent to get it down to where he'd like it to be, where we'd all like it to be for his first fight back.
So, Leigh Wood, feels like I'm coming here more and more often now to talk about big fights for Leigh Wood. Of course, his third fight of the year, which seemingly unheard of for a fighter of his standing in his division, of course, world champion. But a big fight against Josh Warrington, a fight that's been kind of talked about and talked around for the last 2 or 3 years, and we're about 5 weeks away now. It's crept up on us, isn't it?
It has, yeah, and I think that's great. I think the activity's been great for Leigh Wood. A lot of people criticised the types of challenges that we put in front of him and how active those challenges have been in front of him. But I think each performance has progressed, and I think that's been key for him. I think that throughout his career, he had a lot of spells where he was inactive. He's in a great position, and he's here to capitalise on it. He's not getting any younger, so for him to have these big fights, it's important that he gets his rest, but he lives the right life, trains properly, rests, recovers, eats well, looks after himself. He's able to do that. I think that's a huge part of it. I think that the whole attitude of training camp, so to speak, that fighters have these days, I think actually works against them. I think Leigh is the type of fighter that he's very consistent, treats it like a job, as it should be, and that's allowed him to flourish in this period of his career.
You mentioned there about the fights being back-to-back, and Leigh's not somebody that we ever see kind of out of shape or falling out of a nightclub at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. He seems to be a consummate professional. How much more of a benefit, how much more of an advantage does it give somebody like a Leigh Wood compared to people who maybe don't always live that Spartan lifestyle, as it were?
Yeah, 100%. And I say this actually about the pair of them. And by the pair of them, I mean Josh and Leigh. Lots of fighters out there, probably up-and-coming fighters or other fighters that haven't achieved as much as they have, that will look and go, I'm better than them. In what way? You might have more talent, whatever people we call talent. You might associate yourself with having more talent, but you haven't achieved what they've achieved. Why? Because the lads, the discipline, the character that they've got has taken them to these places. That's something that a God-given talent that you haven't really done anything to earn, that you've been given, can take you. But when you start talking about character, your own personal decisions in the gym, outside the gym, all these things, when all these things start coming into having a factor, when talent meets talent, this is where the difference gets made. And that's been a huge thing for Leigh. Coachability, the way that he lives, the way that he's looked after himself, his discipline, his dedication, his commitment, his consistency. Those are things that have allowed him to, like I say, flourish in this point of his career. And it'd be great for me to sit back and go, yeah, you know, it's all down to us and down to whatever we've done and the work that we've done. But, you know, it'd be unfair to say that, because it's Leigh who, for years, you know, I remember Billy Joe coming and said that I don't think Leigh boxed, it was coming up like 2 years, and he said every day he was in the gym like he was fighting in 3-4 weeks' time. That's why he's got to where he's got to. We've just put the cherry on top.
With somebody like Leigh, who is sort of a sponge really and takes on so much information from the gym, I mean, how do you structure his camp? Obviously, I understand that fighters are very different. Some fighters prefer certain styles, or it works a different way for certain fighters. How do you structure his camp? Say, sort of, I mean, how many weeks has the Josh Warrington camp been?
I couldn't tell you how many weeks we've been working, but usually we'll start off with basically, you know, this is a rough idea of what we're looking for, what we're expecting. We'll start to work. In the meantime, once the fight gets signed, Leigh Wiley will start putting together a scouting report. That scouting report will come. We'll sit down, discuss, put together some drills that we feel suit some of the things and scenarios that we want to create and be able to deal with. And we'll start to run them through Leigh. We'll then start sparring. We'll then start to look at strengths. Okay, this area is looking strong, this area is looking weak, we need a bit more time spent practicing this. This scenario keeps occurring that we're not comfortable with. We need to address that. We'll go back over sparring, we'll clip some moments. This is how, these are good moments that you have. This is coming because when you do this, this is a scenario that you're having trouble with, this is why. Let's go away, let's work on that. And this is one of the things with Leigh, like we will put him into spar, he'll go into spar and people will probably come in and go, God, he's having a hard spar. But he will put himself in scenarios where he will simply just look to practice something, whether that's a weakness, strength or a weakness. And if it's a weakness, he won't drift away from it if it's not working to plan. He will continually keep working on that. And that's why those scenarios don't show up on fight night, because he will put himself in uncomfortable situations. Again, that goes back to character. A lot of just pure talented lads, they don't want to do that. I can get away with doing this. This is me. This is how I do things. Yeah, that's how you do things in this situation. But someone that's not going to allow you to do that, and this scenario is going to occur, then what do you do? Because you haven't got the character to practice those things that you're not comfortable with. That's what makes Leigh Wood, and that's what's that's a big part. Is that he's willing to work on his not only his strengths but his weaknesses and put himself in uncomfortable situations and scenarios. So we'll start to address that, and then it will all start to click into place as sparring comes to an end and peaking for fight night.
You've been with Leigh for a little while now. The vast majority of your time together has been overwhelmingly positive. Of course, had the loss against Mauricio Lara in the first fight there, but avenged in brilliant fashion last time out. How would you say that Leigh is different now? How would you say that he's developed or progressed both as a fighter and as a person?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that actually, because when Leigh first came, there was a little bit of resistance to our approach. I think it was like, we will address, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is okay, you need to adjust this, you need to adjust that, you need to do this, you need to do that. I'll tell you what I find, being honest, I find a lot of fighters, what happens, I find personally, a lot of fighters are so used to a bad day at the office, okay, let's say they've had a bad spar, they'll throw a tantrum, and I find what happens, what they're so used to is, tired today, just weight drain today, didn't eat enough today, or didn't do this, or woke up late, or went to bed late. And what actually happened doesn't get addressed. And I feel like when a fighter first starts to get that, it's a make or break. It's either I'm willing to take on board this criticism, I'm willing to look at myself, what am I doing all right, what am I doing wrong? Or I'm not willing, no, it was just because I slept late. No, it was just because I was weight drained. No, it was because the sparring partner was too heavy. He must have been heavy. And at first there was a little bit of resistance for Leigh, but luckily I think he was at a point in his career where it was almost like, if I don't, like, what have I got to lose if I don't commit to it? So I'm just going to go with it. And then scenarios occurred in the first fight that we had together that we had talked about and worked on. And I think he was like, actually, there's something in this. And then it just, I think a big significant thing as well was when going into the Kanzu fight, I think we had about 5 weeks notice, something like that. And I said to him, you don't need much sparring. He was like, what? After the camp before, I actually gave him loads of sparring, loads and loads of sparring. And then all of a sudden, the extreme opposite, where I said, you don't need too much sparring. I think he was like, what? Actually, hold on, how does that work out? Like, I've just done 100 times more rounds than what I'm used to doing, building into a fight. To now you're telling me I don't really need any sparring. And we went through some drills, and then that, again, certain scenarios that we worked on occurred in that fight. And then obviously other fights are happening throughout, and he's seeing us work on things, and then those things happen in the fight, and the confidence just grows, obviously. And now it's just to a point where it's almost like too much, to be honest. Like, sometimes, you know, the fighter's got to be a bit reliant on themselves as well, you know. We can't make every decision for you, like playing a PlayStation game, but, you know, you'd much rather that, because it's so much easier to say, you need to work on this, we want to see you do this. Someone's doing it, and to say, okay, you've overcompensated, now you're doing it too much, let's just, that's a lot easier than you need to do that. I'm still telling you need to do that, still not doing it. I told you need to do that. It's like you're wasting your breath.
It's obviously worked. I mean, Leigh is, of course, a two-time world champion now, and he's boxing Josh Warrington in a fight where, I think, forgive me for saying, he goes into a fairly healthy favourite. When you consider a couple of years ago, had that fight have been made, when Josh Warrington was kind of riding high, I guess the pre-Mauricio Lara years for Josh Warrington, it would have been the other way around. Do you see it that way? Do you see Leigh as a big favourite going into the fight? You were very kind of open before both Mauricio Lara fights when you said that you felt that was a good style for Leigh and probably a bad style for Josh Warrington. How do you see this fight when compared to your Mauricio Lara's?
I see this fight as a 50-50 fight. I think that there's certain areas there's certain scenarios that I think Josh will absolutely dominate in. I think there's certain scenarios that Leigh will absolutely dominate in. And I think it's whoever, you know, if they're not able to avoid those scenarios or know how to kill the scenarios that favour the other person, that person is going to struggle big time. One thing I will say is I think that Josh is probably you know, there's all this talk about Josh. I think Josh is past it and this, that and the other. Like, I don't see that. I don't see that. He beat Kiko Martinez earlier on in his career. He just stopped him. Yes, he lost to Lopez. Lopez just done an absolute number on Mick Conlan, who many would have considered to be one of the top boxers in the division at the time. And I think he's got a bit between his teeth in the sense that he's feeling like he's the B-side and he's not happy about it. So I'm sure that he'll be fully motivated. I think that don't see there being any sliding him, and I think that it's going to be an unbelievable fight. I think that the fact that Matchroom are segregating the arena, I think that it's rare that you find two fighters that really thrive off of the crowd and the atmosphere, but these two guys do that. And I think that there's going to be the battle between the two fans who can make the most noise. It's almost like a bit of an away day for the fans, and then you're going to have the battle between the fighters as well, and the fact that they thrive off of that atmosphere. I can just see it, like, once it catches a light, just the fans pouring petrol on it and it just igniting.
Now, the game plan, certainly for the second Mauricio Lara fight, seemed pretty clear, and certainly in the ring on the night, it was very much kind of do what was working in the first fight, maybe don't hold your feet and don't get, not to say he was, but complacent or careless with any opportunities. How are you going to be approaching, of course, without giving away the game plan? How do you approach Josh Warrington? Josh Warrington is, we all know what to expect from him. He comes forward, he tries to pressure and pressure and pressure. But do you see Leigh having to stand and hold his feet at times in there and having to kind of have a go with him? Or do you think that scenario can present itself in a fight?
Yeah, of course. I think it wouldn't be giving anything away to say that Josh does rush in at times, and Leigh needs to be there to meet him. He's a devastating puncher. Exchanging on Leigh's terms at the right time, it's a vulnerable position for Warrington. He wants to come forward with all this volume that he looks to bring. It leaves himself vulnerable for Leigh, who, Leigh will need to look to bring him onto one. So, at times in the fight, that's a scenario that will occur. Against Mauricio Lara. Yeah, look, I think first time, I think Lara very quickly got a lot of respect for Leigh's power and probably didn't rush in and dive in as much as we'd anticipated or expected or hoped, to be honest. So there was a little adjustment for Leigh next time, just to look to be going first a little bit more and not sit and wait for so long, because that scenario, Lara was a bit too wary to rush in with those transitions as recklessly as we'd seen him before. So noticing that, obviously going into the rematch, we made a little adjustment there. So I think that stands Leigh in good stead for the next fight, because for Josh Warrington fight, because we'll be prepared for Josh to come with this volume, but also be prepared if Josh is a little bit hesitant to switch things up.
I mentioned earlier on that you've been with Leigh for a few fights now. You've had predominantly highs throughout. Won the British title, won the world title, of course, that brilliant fight with Mick Condon. But going into that rematch against Mauricio Lara, considering how the first fight ended, and for yourself with the towel and all the controversy surrounding that, then we had the weigh-in, of course, before the second fight, and a lot of scrutiny added on there. Was that the most satisfying win, do you think, that you've had with Leigh so far because of all of those intangibles?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe, yeah, probably. I think that there was a lot of pressure before the fight with the weigh-in, and I thought, I had no doubt that Leigh was going to end up being the bigger fighter in the ring by the time they got in the ring, no matter what. I know that he weighed in at 4 pound heavier or whatever, but I knew tomorrow when they get in the ring, Leigh will be bigger than Lara. But the problem is that what you get is the public perception. There was a chance that Lara landed a good shot and Leigh got knocked out. What a stupid decision I made to put Leigh in there without them knowing the X's and O's. But you have to be confident and stand by your, go on your gut instinct. We picked Lara for a reason. We picked Lara, picked to go for the rematch for a reason, and it took 2 chances, but we proved ourselves right in the end.
Obviously not looking past October the 7th, but Leigh has been very, very vocal about a fight at the City Ground at some point. I know that was something that he was, was hanging his hat on in hope for the Warrington fight here. Is that the next step for him? Of course, not writing off Josh Warrington on October the 7th. He's also spoke about potentially going over to Las Vegas and fighting stateside. Seems like those two are very much still on the bucket list for Leigh.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I do think that this fight could end up being a fight of the year candidate. So I'll be shocked if it wasn't. So who's to say that it's not a great fight, close fight? These two do it again next time at the City Ground. Leigh is 35 now, I believe. Making the weight, he's getting tougher and tougher. So I also, not looking past Josh Warrington at all, but I do like the Navarrete fight for Leigh Wood. Maybe we can bring Navarrete over and take him to the City Ground at super featherweight. So, but yeah, let's see.
That's an interesting fight, Navarrete. What did you make of his fight with Oscar Valdez?
I thought Valdez was a bit too obvious in looking to try and bring him onto something, but feet wasn't quite right to be able to do that. But it's a fight that for a little while we've looked at and I quite like for Leigh Wood.
What do you make of Navarrete? I know you'd have seen plenty of Navarrete as well when you were over in Vegas, and kind of when he was doing his little top rank boxing every 2 or 3 months, wasn't he?
Yeah, he actually boxed on it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did.
He boxed Flash Alorde's grandson, didn't he? On the Wallin undercard,
yeah,
I think.
That's
I think
right.
he also boxed on a Schwartz card.
I think he did box on both. Yeah.
What do you make of him as a fighter?
Good, he's a dangerous guy. I think, what is this, his third weight class? Third weight class of world
He'd
champion?
been a super bantam at that time when you'd have seen him.
Yeah. So, you know, anyone who becomes a freeweight world champion is a top quality fighter. But yeah, it's a fight that we like. Oh, I've actually mentioned it to Top Rank before, and they was like, this was after the Mick Conlan fight actually, and they was like, bloodbath, forget about it. But look, it'd have to be a smart approach. But you know, look, let's see. We're not looking past Josh Warrington. It's an option. It's something that we could potentially look at.
There's another option. I saw Leigh calling out Floyd Mayweather a few weeks ago. What happened there?
Yeah, well, big Floyd if he wants it. No, Floyd's looking to promote his young protege, and I don't blame him. It's part of the job, and he's done a good job because everybody was talking about it, so fair play to him.
Must be quite the feather in the cap, though, even still for Leigh. I mean, okay, Floyd's trying to kind of raise interest for his prospect, but still he's used Leigh Wood's name, and must be quite a strange one for Leigh, getting his name pulled out by Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, so he come in and he was like, have you seen this Floyd video? I was like, no. And then he showed me, and I said to him, you know, shows, you know, making noise, and he's had some over in stateside as well, so he's had an amazing run the last 2 years, and you know, like I say, Floyd wants the exhibition, Leigh's up for it.
Yeah, I bet he is. Okay, I think that's probably everything that we need today on Leigh Wood's bout with Josh Warrington. The only thing that I'm missing is, of course, a prediction bet. And I know you don't like giving them, but I'm going to ask for them anyway. How does the fight end, Leigh Wood versus Josh Warrington?
Yeah, I do. I fancy Leigh Wood by stoppage.
Okay. Josh never, well, actually has. Yeah, he's been stopped by Mauricio Lara, but he's never really shown too much vulnerability in his career. What makes you think they would get the stoppage?
I just think that, you know, I think he's underestimated how hard Leigh punches. And I think that the situations that occurred with Mauricio Lara may present themselves with Leigh, who I believe punches harder than Mauricio Lara, pound for pound. I believe that Leigh is better, well-rounded. So if other scenarios are occurring, Leigh's able to capitalise on them as well. He is extremely tough, Josh as well, though. You know, I'm saying that. You know, he's pretty much gone against Mauricio Lara in the 4th round, made it to the 9th. And, but like I said, I think that there's lots of things that Lara doesn't have in the locker and in his game that Leigh can bring. So, yeah.
Okay, well, Ben Davison, we look forward to it. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing News, and we'll catch up with you soon.
No problem.